Today, we're going over the most evil thing Vlad the Impaler ever did. And I don't mean the fake Dracula version, I don't mean the vampire stories, the spooky castle, or the horror movie stuff. I'm talking about the real Vlad, the actual ruler of Wallachia, the man who turned cruelty into a weapon so effective that even the Ottoman Empire, the most powerful military force in the world at the time, looked at what he had done and backed away. And that's what makes this story so disturbing. Because the worst thing Vlad did was not just brutal. It was smart. It was planned. It was meant to break people's minds before it ever broke their bodies. By the end of this, you'll understand why the most evil thing Vlad the Impaler did wasn't just killing people. It was building a nightmare so horrifying that it stopped an empire in its tracks. Let's get into it. First, we need to talk about how someone even becomes Vlad the Impaler. It's 1442, and Vlad is just a boy, around 11 years old. His father, Vlad II Dracula, makes a deal with the Ottoman Empire. In exchange for keeping his throne in Wallachia, he gives up 2 of his sons as hostages. One of them is Vlad, the other is his younger brother, Radu. So Vlad is taken from home and brought deep into the Ottoman world. Now, this is the part people get wrong. He wasn't thrown into some dark dungeon and left to rot. He was raised inside the Ottoman system. He got education, military training, language lessons, and court experience. On the surface, it looked almost comfortable. But that doesn't change what it really was. He was still a hostage. His freedom depended on his father's loyalty. His future was in the hands of the same empire that could kill him if it wanted. He spent his teenage years watching powerful men rule through fear, punishment, and spectacle. He saw how terror could be used not just to punish enemies, but to control entire populations. And while his brother Radu adapted well to court life and became close to the Ottomans, Vlad did not. He resisted. He stayed angry. He stayed bitter. And somewhere in those years, something inside him hardened. That matters, because when people talk about Vlad later, they usually act like he was just born a monster. But that's not really what this looks like. What it looks like is a boy who learned from one of the harshest empires on earth that fear works. And then later, when he got power, he used that lesson better than his teachers did. That's the scary part. He didn't invent terror. He perfected it. Then everything in his life gets worse. After years in Ottoman hands, Vlad returns to Wallachia as a teenager. And almost immediately, his family is destroyed. His father is assassinated. His older brother is captured and buried alive. The nobles of Wallachia, the Boyars, are involved in the power struggle, and Vlad is left basically alone in a country full of enemies. So now imagine what that does to a person who already grew up as a hostage. He has no reason to trust anyone, no reason to believe in mercy, no reason to think kindness keeps you alive. And for the next several years, Vlad lives in exile, waits for his chance, studies politics, studies war, and plans his return. Then, in 1456, he finally takes the throne of Wallachia. And this is where the real Vlad steps onto the stage, because once he becomes prince, he doesn't just want to rule. He wants control, total control. And the first people to learn that are the Boyars. Vlad invites them to a great feast. These are the noble families who helped shape Wallachian politics for years, the same class of people tied to the death of his father and brother. They come dressed in fine clothes, expecting ceremony, politics, maybe some nervous alliance building with the new prince. Instead, Vlad stands up during the feast and asks them a question. How many princes have you lived through? It sounds simple, almost casual, but it's a trap. The older Boyars proudly answer. Some boast that they have survived many rulers. They think they are showing experience, importance, and political wisdom. What they are really doing is confessing. They are admitting that they outlived prince after prince because they were the kind of men who helped remove princes when it suited them. Vlad hears that, smiles, and gives the order. The older Boyars are arrested and impaled. The younger and stronger ones, along with their families, are forced to march to the ruins of Poenari Castle and rebuild it by hand. They carry stone, work themselves to death, and are broken physically and mentally in the process. That alone would make Vlad one of the cruelest rulers in history. But even here, you can already see the pattern. This is not random rage. This is punishment designed as theater. He is not just killing enemies.
he is sending a message to everyone else. Betray me, and I will not simply remove you.
I will make an example out of you so terrible that nobody forgets it, and from that point on, fear becomes the center of his rule. Now, if this had stayed inside Wallachia, Vlad would still be remembered as a brutal local ruler. Horrifying, yes, but not world-famous. What changed everything was what he did to the Ottomans. Because eventually, the empire that helped shape him came back to collect obedience. By 1459, Sultan Mehmed II sends envoys to Wallachia demanding tribute and demanding that Vlad renew his loyalty. This is not some minor request. This is the Ottoman Empire telling a small border prince to remember his place. And Vlad's response is pure menace. The envoys arrive at his court and refuse to remove their turbans, which was part of their custom and diplomatic tradition. Vlad asks them why. They explain. He acts respectful. He acts interested. Then he says, essentially, if you honor your tradition so much, I'll help you keep it forever. And he orders the turbans nailed to their heads. Just think about how calculated that is. He doesn't just kill them, he mutilates them in a way that makes the insult unforgettable. He takes a symbol of status, religion, and custom, and turns it into a permanent wound. That is not the act of a man losing control. That is the act of a man using cruelty like language. He wants the Sultan to understand the message without anyone needing to explain it. And Mehmed understands. War is now inevitable. But before the final showdown, we need to talk about Vlad's signature method, because if you're going to understand the most evil thing he ever did, you have to understand how he thought. Most people know that Vlad impaled people. That's the one fact everybody remembers. But what they usually don't understand is that impalement wasn't just execution to him. It was performance. It was engineering. It was psychology. A quick death would not have served his purpose. The point was not simply to kill. The point was to terrify everyone who saw it, heard about it, smelled it, and imagined it. Victims were placed on stakes in ways meant to prolong suffering. The deaths could take hours, sometimes longer. The bodies were displayed in public places, near roads, outside towns, wherever the greatest number of people would see them. And Vlad didn't just use impalement as punishment. He used it as a visual system. Different heights for different ranks. Bigger displays for bigger messages. Public arrangements that turned dead bodies into warnings. That's one of the most disturbing things about him. He thought like a stage director. He understood that fear spreads faster than armies do. One person sees something horrifying, tells 10 others, and those 10 tell 100 more. Rumor does the rest. Soon, people aren't just scared of what he has done. They're scared of what he might do. That kind of terror can govern a country. It can also poison the mind of the man using it. And by 1462, Vlad is about to use that system on the largest scale of his life. This is the moment the whole story builds toward. Sultan Mehmed II has had enough. Vlad has refused tribute. He has raided Ottoman lands south of the Danube. According to his own claims, he killed tens of thousands during these attacks. Whether every number is exact or not, the point is clear. Vlad is no longer a rebellious prince making trouble on the edge of empire. He is a threat. So Mehmed decides to deal with him personally. And when the Ottoman Sultan moves personally, it means the problem is serious. He assembles a massive army, somewhere in the range of 60,000 to 90,000 men, depending on the source. Either way, it's overwhelming. Vlad cannot beat this force in open battle. Wallachia is too small. His manpower is too limited. If he fights normally, he loses. So he does not fight normally. Instead, he turns the whole land into a trap. Villages are emptied, wells are poisoned, fields are burned, food is removed, livestock is taken away, civilians retreat into the forests and mountains. The Ottomans march deeper into a place that has been stripped bare. No supplies, no comfort, no clear target. And then the night raids begin. Small Wallachian units hit Ottoman camps in the dark, attack, kill, burn, and disappear. No big battle, no heroic line of troops charging into glory, just confusion, exhaustion, fire, screams, and paranoia.
the Ottomans are forced to keep moving through a landscape that feels dead in the daytime and haunted at night. Then comes the famous night attack of June 17th, 1462. Vlad leads a force into the Ottoman camp under cover of darkness. His men use confusion, captured gear, and surprise to strike deep into enemy lines. Their target is Mehmed himself. Kill the Sultan, and the invasion might collapse. They come frighteningly close. The camp erupts into chaos. Fires spread, horses panic. Men are cut down in darkness.
Ottoman soldiers don't fully know where the attack is coming from or who is where. In the end, Vlad fails to kill Mehmed. The Janissaries hold the line around the Sultan, and Vlad is forced to retreat. Now, on paper, that sounds like a failed mission. But psychologically, it's devastating. Think about what just happened. The ruler of a tiny principality, badly outnumbered, nearly reached the most powerful man in the Islamic world in the middle of his own giant army. If Vlad can do that once, what else can he do? By now, the Ottoman soldiers are tired, hungry, and nervous. They're marching through a scorched country. They're being hunted at night. Their confidence is cracking. And Vlad knows exactly what comes next. Because now, he's ready to show them the most evil thing he ever did. As the Ottoman army approaches the Wallachian capital of Targoviste, the smell hits first. That detail matters. Before they even see anything, they smell death. Not one body. Not a battlefield after one clash. Thousands, rotting flesh in summer heat. The kind of smell that gets into your nose and throat and doesn't leave. The kind of smell that tells your body something is deeply, terribly wrong before your eyes even confirm it. Then they see the stakes. At first, maybe one or two, then dozens, then hundreds, then thousands, and then the full scale becomes clear. Spread out before them is what later becomes known as the Forest of the Impaled. Some sources say around 10,000 bodies. Others say as many as 20,000. However high the real number was, it was enormous. An entire landscape of human beings raised on stakes. Ottoman prisoners, captured enemies, real people turned into part of a giant display. And this was not a messy pile of corpses left after battle. That's what makes it worse. It was arranged, ordered, designed. The bodies were set in rows and patterns. Heights were chosen deliberately. Important prisoners were displayed more prominently. One high-ranking Ottoman commander, Hamza Pasha, was placed on a particularly high stake as a message to the Sultan himself. This was not killing for killing's sake. This was communication through horror. Vlad had created a physical statement so monstrous that it could not be ignored, explained away, or emotionally survived in a normal way, and some of the victims were not even fully dead yet. That part is almost impossible to process, because it means the display was not just visual, it was alive. Or partly alive. There were rotting bodies, yes, but according to multiple accounts, there were also dying men still making noise, still breathing, still hanging between life and death as the Ottoman army approached. So now, imagine being one of those soldiers. You have marched for weeks through burned land, you've slept badly, you've been hit at night, you've seen almost no enemy face to face, you're tired, hungry, angry, and scared, and then you walk into this. A giant field of your own people lifted into the sky like warnings. The smell is everywhere. The silence is broken by moans and insects and the movement of men trying not to throw up. And the prince you came to crush did this on purpose because he knew exactly what it would do to your brain. That's why I think this was the most evil thing Vlad the Impaler ever did. Not because it was the bloodiest thing, not even because it was the cruelest in pure physical terms, but because this was suffering turned into strategy at the highest level. He built terror like a machine. Everything about the forest was chosen for effect. The scale, the layout, the timing, the location, the message. It told the Ottomans that normal rules did not apply here. It told them the man they were hunting did not think like other rulers. It told them victory itself might not be worth the cost. And here is the part that should make you uncomfortable. It worked. That's the worst part of the whole story. It worked.
Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, one of the greatest military leaders of the age, sees the field and understands what kind of enemy he is dealing with. He may still have the larger army, he may still be stronger on paper, but this is no longer just about troop numbers. It's about morale. It's about fear. It's about whether your men can keep moving forward after seeing something like that. And the answer, increasingly, is no. The Ottomans were already stretched thin. Supplies were running low. The scorched earth tactics had done damage. The night raids had damaged morale. The attempt on the Sultan's life had rattled command. The forest of the Impaled is the breaking point. Within days, Mehmed withdraws with the main army. Read that again in plain terms. A tiny principality facing one of the strongest empires on earth survives not by winning a fair fight, but by horrifying the enemy so deeply that continuing the campaign becomes unbearable. That is what Vlad accomplished.
And that is why the Forest of the Impaled was not just an atrocity. It was one of the most effective acts of psychological warfare in history. But here's the thing about using terror as your greatest tool. Sooner or later, it becomes your only tool, and that's exactly what happened to Vlad. After this, he doesn't suddenly become a disciplined national hero who uses brutality only when necessary. He keeps going. He uses terror on enemies, rivals, merchants, suspicious nobles, and even ordinary people. Once you train yourself to rule through fear, it becomes hard to rule any other way. That's the trap. The method that made him powerful also made him impossible. He could terrify enemies, yes, but he could also terrify allies. He could protect Wallachia in the short term, but he could not build stable trust around himself. The same ruthlessness that made him effective in war made him dangerous in peace. And eventually his position weakens. His younger brother Radu, backed by the Ottomans, becomes the alternative. Vlad loses support. Hungarian allies become less reliable. Politics turns against him. By late 1462, only months after his greatest triumph, Vlad is forced into exile and later falls into Hungarian captivity. Think about how bitter that is. He did the impossible. He turned back a major imperial invasion through sheer terror and strategic cruelty. And yet, even after all that, he still loses control of his own future. That's the final lesson in this story. Terror can win moments. It can even win campaigns. But it consumes the person using it. Vlad later returns briefly to power in 1476, but it doesn't last. Within months he is dead, killed in battle or chaos, depending on the source. His head is cut off, preserved, and sent to Mehmed in Constantinople as proof. After all the fear he created, after all the bodies on all those stakes, after all the careful effort to make himself look larger than life, that is how it ends. Not with immortality, not with glory, with a severed head sent to an old enemy, and yet his reputation outlives almost everyone around him. In Romania, many still remember him as a defender who stood against impossible odds. In much of the wider world, he became mixed up with Dracula and transformed into a supernatural monster. But in a strange way, the vampire story almost makes him easier to deal with. Because if he was just some fantasy creature, then we don't have to think too hard about what he really was. A human being, a man shaped by violence, hostage-taking, betrayal, war, and power. A man who learned that fear controls people, and then pushed that lesson to its most horrifying extreme. That's why the real Vlad is scarier than the fictional one. A vampire is a fairy tale. Vlad was real. The forest was real. The strategy was real. And the most evil thing he ever did was not simply murdering thousands of people. It was turning their suffering into a message so powerful that it could stop an empire. So there you have it. The most evil thing Vlad the Impaler ever did was create the Forest of the Impaled, a massive field of Ottoman prisoners and enemies displayed on stakes outside Targoviste as one giant act of psychological warfare. Not just murder, not just torture. A message, a machine made out of fear, and the reason this story still hits so hard is because it forces you to face something ugly about history. Sometimes the most horrifying acts are not done in blind rage. Sometimes they are done calmly, carefully, and intelligently by people who understand exactly what terror can achieve. Vlad understood it better than almost anyone.
He knew that if you could break the mind, the body would follow. And for one terrible moment in 1462, that idea worked so well that one of the greatest empires on earth looked into a field of death, understood the message, and stepped back. That is what made Vlad unforgettable. Not the cape, not the Dracula myth, not the spooky stories. The fact that he proved human cruelty, when used with precision, could be stronger than an army.